Hi, welcome to the Social Housing Podcast. I'm Lewis Murray from VoiceScape, and joining me for this podcast will be John Cocker, Chief Information Officer at Platform Housing Group. Formed in 2018 following the merger of Waterloo Housing Group and Fortis Living, Platform Housing Group are now a 47,000 property landlord providing services across the whole of the Midlands. John, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you on the Social Housing Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Before we jump straight in, yeah, absolutely. Before we jump in, it would be great to get to know a bit more about you. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself and your role at Platform and what your day-to-day responsibilities and objectives are?
Absolutely. I'm Chief Information Officer here at Platform. So my directorate looks after reporting. It looks after all the IT, the infrastructure, the security, the Enterprise Project Management Office, all the data engineering side. Obviously quite a wide remit, but also I sit on the executive team, so taking part in the strategic discussions around financial planning and planning for the business going forward as well. So you've got quite a few different hats I have to wear on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. Well, we initially agreed we would do this podcast following a really interesting post that you'd put onto LinkedIn, asking the sector to come together and start benchmarking spends as well as we as a sector benchmark performance. I wanted to ask, why do you feel it's so important to come together as a sector and be transparent about technology budgets?
There's a couple of rationales for it, to be honest with you, Lewis. So first of all, technology is now, it's the key driver for efficiencies in most organisations, and so especially in housing, where you're getting, really good customer services, where you're getting, really effective provisioning and logistics. That's all about the technology that you're using. And what I thought it was really important, not to look and say, some people are really cheap at technology or some people are really expensive. It's to making sure that people are spending, the right amount compared to peers as well. And when you have a look at benchmarking, you see, a similar size organisation, and I'm spending a third of what they're doing. Am I getting the right outcomes for that? But similarly, an organisation that might spend a huge amount of money doesn't necessarily mean that they're being wasteful, because they could have really effective back-end efficiencies with the rest of the business. So it's got to be seen as part of a whole. But I just think it's really important that we at least have that conversation so we can go to our peers and say, you're spending half the amount of us. Are you getting the same outcomes? Is there something different I can do to make sure that I'm providing services to my organisation in a better way?
So not just about necessarily benchmarking, but also coming together to share best practice and to uncover new technologies that you can recommend and you can talk about and dig into.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key for any benchmarking, not just financial benchmarking, but it's a can opener into a conversation about, you're doing something really well, or you're doing something that's better than we are. How are you doing it? What can we do to achieve that? And vice versa as well. Housing, we're all trying to do the same thing. And so we're all doing the same things in slightly different ways. And you can speak to another housing associations that's the same size of us, but, in one area, really strong, and we can take some really strong learnings from them from our side, but we're really strong in another area. And the fact that we're not in competition makes this sector, unique and a really nice place to work, because I can go and speak to colleagues in different companies, and there's that spirit of sharing and spirit that we all want to get better. And the better way for us all to get better is for us all to share that best practice. So I think it's a really nice thing about working in the housing sector.
It is definitely. It's always been something that I've noticed, from kind of the outside looking in, that as a sector, everybody really pulls together and everyone's really happy to share the best practice and show off what they're doing.
I mean, I used to work in business telecoms, so I'll not tell you the company, but I worked for a big provider of telecoms, and it would be, you'd get fired for speaking to to a competitor about anything. It was just a completely different mindset when I moved here and moved into housing. And so we said, well, go and speak to them down the road and share what we've done. Like, are they actually going to speak to me? Yeah, it's just like, it's quite surprising when you have those conversations, but it is really nice.
Yeah, and I suppose the question that makes me want to ask is, especially for larger organizations like Platform, when you're doing that kind of benchmarking, you're doing that shared best practice and you're having those conversations, how easy is it for you as an organization to adopt new technologies and investigate what's out there in the market?
I think I'm really lucky in platform. We are a large organisation, and that means that we can have, I've got more bodies essentially, so I've got more capacity to be able to do things, and it gives me time they give me the capacity to give to my team to go out and investigate things. But one thing I'm really keen on, and one thing we do have here in platform, is that we have innovation time within our teams as well. So we say to people, look, if you have a pet project or you've got some time, as long as it's relevant to the business, you can't go off and do basket weaving or something like that, but it's got to be something relevant to what we're trying to do, be that AI or be machine learning or IoT, without any sort of expectations. Go and have a look at what that technology can do and see what it can do for the business. And I really like that, being able to do it. And I think in the current climate as well, because we're all after resources, and a lot of the resources that we're after are quite creative, in this dev world, and developers tend to be a creative type of people. Giving people that freedom to be able to, I'm trying to think of an analogy, open the wings or something like that, to be able to go look outside their core day job and have a look at this new technology, I think is a really good, helpful place for everybody to be. And I think it keeps people enthused and motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose as you give colleagues that opportunity and you give them that sort of freedom to look into new products, new services, new technologies that are available, as an IT leader yourself, how do you ensure that whatever you're doing gets the best value for your customers' money? And why might some of those steps that you would take be important for housing providers to do?
I think what you've got to have is got to have a really good relationship with your procurement team, or your procurement specialist that's in your organisation, however large you are. And I think engaging with procurement right at the front end of a discussion helps you, because they know, buying's their job, and understanding value for money, understanding contracts is their role. We know the technology, and it's around playing to people's strengths. So we engage with our procurement team really, really early on projects. We understand what the roadmap is. We understand what our expectations are. We understand what we want to do, and we sort of empower them to then go and look and see what technology is in, and then we all come together. So it's looking at it from a several pronged place, but that's including the business as well. So I know I've worked in places where IT are very big dictatorial. This is a solution, go away, and this is what you're having. That's not the way it should be. The users should have that voice. Procurement from a contract management perspective and from a value for money perspective, technology from a strategic perspective as well, and making sure that we come to the right solution for the business. I'm really keen on that and that engagement side of things.
Is there a particular structure or balance that you have to strike in order to find the right products, get users bought in and enthusiastic about adopting that new technology, and managing a procurement process with your procurement colleagues?
I think it's all around business benefit. It's all around value to the business, and I think you can pitch it in very different ways. So there's value to the customer, which is absolutely critical in the world of the Better Social Housing Review and the customer voice across there. Being able to demonstrate that there's a real customer benefit to a piece of work is a key one. Colleague benefit is the other aspect. This makes your life easier, with the corresponding aspect of, if your life is easier and quicker, that means we can spend more time with our customers. And then there's the obvious one, which is, does this save us money? And every housing association, we've got the 7% rent cap this year. Inflation, it's still not dropped below double digits. So everybody's under pressure in terms of their financial metrics, and having value for money at the heart of what you're doing, and making sure that, I always equate it to, this is an old person's rent. This is their pension money that we are spending. And you've got to keep that in mind when you're going out and spending things. This isn't just, money just don't grow on trees. There's actually somebody sat in their home, perhaps not very wealthy, perhaps struggling to heat, perhaps struggling to get enough to eat. And what we need to do is to bear that level of responsibility as a sector, and say, actually, we're going to spend that money wisely, and we're going to understand that this is going to have value to that person. I think that's a really key component of anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned there the rent cap at 7.5%.
I think it's 7, Lewis. I think it's 7. Yeah. I think they say it's 7.
Right. Okay, I've got that wrong. So we've got the rent cap. And at the same time, what we're seeing across the board is that costs are going up significantly more than the rent cap, as you sort of rightly pointed out. I mean, even if we just go off, current rates of inflation, we're, plus 10%.
Absolutely.
And I know that for social housing providers, you're probably a bit north of that because of just the types of things that you're trading in, with things like repairs and assets and all that kind of stuff, maintenance, is being particularly expensive. How should that, in your opinion, how should that affect IT budgets going forward? Do you feel that that's an opportunity to increase IT budget to find greater efficiencies? How do you feel that should maybe change over the next 12 months?
Well, and I think this goes back to that budget benchmarking that we started the conversation with. It's around spending money that provides value. And so, I think it's not around increasing the budget or decreasing it. It's about saying to the business, me spending this £100 gives £120 back in value. And if that can be demonstrated, then your budget, I suppose, shouldn't matter, because as long as you're providing the corresponding level of value to the rest of the business, the higher your budget, the more efficient your business should be, and therefore your costs at the back end should be lower. So the IT budget, sometimes can be a bit of a symptom of the efficiency or inefficiency of an organisation. But I think everything has got to have really robust business cases, and making sure that you are really really clear on those financial metrics of what you're going to be delivering in terms of efficiency and, total cost of ownership, making sure that you've got really clear return on investment plan. And the benefits piece is such a critical aspect as well. I know in several organisations where, projects are defined, and then they've got a level of benefits that are going to be done, and then the project gets delivered, everybody breathes a sigh of relief, and then it's forgotten about and the benefits aren't done. But that's not where the project should end. You should have a really clear benefits management process, a benefit management policy, really clear accountability of who owns that benefit. And again, it's talking about that engagement piece, is having those links with finance to, if we've developed this capability, that particular efficiency is reflected in the budgets as well. So boards, financial people, executives, they can see, we delivered that project, here's the corresponding spend decrease, spend increase, or spend change, and you can equate it back to that particular project. And I think that's a really key discipline that we need to have.
Absolutely. So from your experience and your opinion on things, it sounds like you really need to have a very clear, joined up way of working, thinking, and delivering the value against the IT budget spend. What's the best way for an organization to adopt a really good internal comms to support that?
I think from a structural point of view, I think the business partner approach really works really well. So we're a financial business partner, we have HR business partner and things like that. So we have that, but it's around having those conversations and being absolutely honest about what's being delivered. And it's about that co-design as well. Other than technology, we shouldn't be setting the priorities for the business for the next 2 to 3 years. It should be the business saying, this is our pain points, this is where we want the technology to be able to drive for us. And it's flipping it over a little bit. So we are being an enabler of the service rather than a driver of the service, to be honest with you. And I think that's where things fall down a little bit. And I'm sure you've been involved in projects where, IT are doing this to us. We don't know why we're doing it. Why are we doing this project? It's been implemented on us, and actually we need to flip that on the head, where it's this is a business project. It's got an IT element on it, but the IT element is just one component of the change, the communications, the benefits process, and it's all wrapped up into one governance piece.
So a clear communication of what the strategic and operational objectives are, to ensure then that IT colleagues are able to kind of get behind that. And sort of put all the wood behind the arrow. Everybody knows exactly what they're looking to deliver as an end goal.
Absolutely, and it is the key. And it's having those conversations. As I said, it's around engagement, and it's true engagement as well. It's listening to the business pain points, and being able to react to those.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are the main challenges that you're facing in IT at the moment?
There's quite a few at the moment. I mean, I'm picking up
Sorry to dump that one on you.
it's fine. I mean, you'll have seen in the papers today and yesterday around the threat, cybersecurity threat that they were facing. That the government are warning that they are expecting big threats. Now, again, I've done quite a few talks on cybersecurity, and I'm fairly confident that the housing sector wouldn't be a primary target for sort of state-sponsored cybersecurity. However, because we are in the sector that we do regular liaison with utilities, we do regular liaison with local government, with central government, and they definitely will be a target, So it's quite possible that the housing sector is going to be exposed because of the level of stakeholders and the type of stakeholders that we have. So cybersecurity is one that keeps me up at night, and I'm sure the same for every CIO, every IT director, every security person. It's the one risk that we really do. The other side of that is the recruitment environment that we've got at the moment. Key skills are hard to get and they're expensive. And we know that people, if you've got skill set in dynamics, for example, you can pick and choose your roles because everybody's after those. And so we're seeing that in wage inflation for people, but also that we need to, as an organisation, making sure that we offer an attractive package or an attractive environment for people to come and work in, because people do have that level of choice. And, it's around making sure that we offer the incentives that might not be financial, so we can compete with other organisations. From a financial perspective, we're never going to compete with a big bank in central London. That's just not feasible. But in terms of our work-life balance, in terms of our benefits, in terms of the culture and that cultural aspect that we can offer, I think we can do an attractive package. But it is a key risk. You've got these number of staff members that could get another job and go away. And, you're then left with a big hole, a big skills gap, a big capability gap that you can't fill. And then you're going out to market. And if you're going out to market a year later, the salaries have increased, exponentially in that time period. And then you're going back to board for budgets, whilst not providing, in theory, any extra value. You're getting, you've got the same capacity, the same skill set, but actually it suddenly cost us an extra 20 or 30 grand more than it did do. And so the board are quite rightly saying, well, what extra am I going to get for this? And the answer is, well, actually nothing. This is just a status quo because of the way the wage inflation is going at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. No, I understand that challenge. It seems to be reflected across the social housing sector. And in a few disciplines as well, I suppose, not just IT, because we had a conversation with colleagues of yours on this social housing podcast a little while back with Mark Mail.
Yeah.
He talked about how property care invest in their sort of in their engineers and upskilling engineers so that they can grow with them and be part of the culture, I suppose.
Absolutely. Skills are in short supply, skills are in short supply, and could that be financial? You're right, trades in short supply, development skills in short supply. It is a definite job seekers market at the moment there, which presents its own challenges. But on the plus side, you've got some really good candidates out there that you can get.
So there's some advantages as well to the fact that the skills are increasing out there.
Yeah, I mean, not everything is a negative, and I think because what we're seeing is because people are seeing these types of roles being really attractive, people are retraining, reskilling to move into these roles where there's big gaps, and so hopefully that pool will increase. But it's going to take time, Lewis. It's not going to happen overnight. But the key thing for us as a sector, and also I suppose any sector, is having that apprenticeship pipeline and having that pipeline of people coming through who are either straight from school, straight from university, or indeed a bit older and looking for a career change, and having the capacity to be able to bring those in to do an apprenticeship scheme and grow your own skills. So I think that's going to be the key thing going forward, and making sure that you've got that pipeline, that you've always got this risk of really skilled people finding another role, and making sure that you've got that constant role of people being upskilled from internal, and then making sure that you can succession plan properly.
And it's great for organisations like Platform to be able to do that. A 40 plus thousand property landlord, big IT requirements, big teams, bringing people in, it's all about that, the sustainability message that the housing sector as a whole is always looking to promote. Bringing new skills in, giving people jobs for life, giving them the tools that they need to go on and prosper, exactly like we do with giving homes to people, and those people being able to use those homes as a springboard into social mobility.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, we're social organisations. That's what we're here to do. And any opportunity we can provide, I think we have a duty to do. I think, and you're right. Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I think this is why a lot of people do work in the social housing sector, because you're not lying in a shareholder's pocket. The efficiencies you make and the work that you do, you're seeing nice people in nice homes, and that's it's a lovely thing to come to work to be able to do. It's there's not many jobs where you come in and see yourselves doing real good, and I think that's the housing sector as a whole. It should be really proud of itself.
Absolutely, there's a lot of really positive impact that the social housing sector does, and it's a real, it is great that it's there to support people in the right ways.
Absolutely.
There's one other question I had for you, and you touched on it really, really briefly much earlier on, was about some of the advancements happening in technology, and with technology advancing at such a rapid pace, and we're seeing the mainstream adoption of artificial intelligence. We're seeing Internet of Things devices like smart thermostats are almost now the norm. How do you see the use of data adapting and growing for social landlords in the future?
I think what a lot of housing associations were really good at, telling you what happened yesterday, and perhaps, and we're getting to a point now saying what's happening today. But what we've not really sort of grasped as a sector as a whole is telling you what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think the adoption of IoT and the devices it's a means to collect data. Let's be honest, it's a means to collect data and bring that data into a central point. But you hit on it, artificial intelligence. I mean, 12 months ago, if you'd have said ChatGPT to somebody, they'd just looked at you, gone out. But now, you have conversations with people on in the sector or in IT that's talking about that type of thing. And the way it's moved on very quickly, it's sort of frightening to think in 12 months' time, what's it going to be capable of? It's going to be embedded into Microsoft products going forward. But there's threats there, as you can imagine. It's on our risk register, our operational risk register, to understand what threat it could be. But obviously, it's a massive opportunity, Lewis, as well for us. If you can have artificial intelligence thinking for itself, not only the customer inquiries, that's a given. That's a standard technology. AI chatbots, AI on phones, that's been around for a while. But being able to make decisions, that's going to be the key thing, standard decisions. So customer, I always give an example of, can I keep chickens in my back garden? It's a standard decision that the AI can make without having somebody to do it, because it's fairly cut and dried based on those. And as it advances, it's going to be able to make more and more advanced decisions. But the one thing it'll never be able to do is build that relationship with customers and stakeholders. And I think that's the USP that we have in the housing sector, is that we build the technology to remove all the transactional stuff, the stuff that we don't need to have somebody involved in. And what that's doing is freeing up people to build a relationship with customers, to make sure that we actually add value to their lives, because we've got time to be able to spend more time with people. So I think that's where the opportunity comes in. And I've taken that away from technology, but I'm a firm believer that everything at the end of it is about people, everything is about customers, everything's about those customer relationships. So the technology is a means to the end to make sure that we get a better relationship with customers.
Absolutely, it's using technology to clear the hurdles that
Absolutely.
separate the customer from you, the people who are the organisation that is Platform Housing Group.
Absolutely, and again, as we move there, what we're using it for now is that prioritization aspect. So we've done a piece of work on machine learning. So we had the outcome of the Peabody report, and we were looking at what silent customers were. And so we've got some very clever people on my team started talking about technology I don't understand. I'll be absolutely honest with you. And they've built in there a piece of work. We're using machine learning for silence, and basically look at all the variables, and then it gives you a probability of that customer being a silent tenant. And that allows our housing teams then to focus on those people, for tenancy health checks. So instead of having to go blank sheet of paper, we're going to have to visit everybody. We've got some level of prioritization of need. And it's the same with IoT. You mentioned IoT. We're putting those in properties. We can see with that data, this property is losing, 1 degree of heat every 2 minutes or something like that. We can see its insulation. We can prioritize using that information. So there's an immediate use for that type of thing without even looking for the future. We can do more with less because we can target the right people, the right properties at the right time.
So you would say then, generally speaking, the future of technology is looking very bright in the social housing sector.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to create better relationships between customers and their landlords.
Absolutely. I think that's the key, but properly implemented. There's that. Certainly from our perspective in platform, what we don't want to do is to have that technology barrier between us and our customers. There's a lot of organisations in the private sector where, you're fighting against it, trying to speak to somebody. What we want to do is to make sure it's complemented, that it's so easy to use and it's so good that it's the de facto way for people to go, because you're going to get an answer straight away, you'll get the information straight away, but still have those channels for people who don't want to use it. But because you've got a lot of people using the technology, you've got the time to deal with those people out there. I think, moving to a digital-only housing association, that's not where we want to be. I'm sure others may look at it, but that's not where we want to be. We want to have that choice for customers, and it's clear that we've got that choice.
Well, the great thing about using artificial intelligence and machine learning, those types of technologies, that they're better at making the decision as to at what point can I offer a transactional response, and at what point can I give this customer a great experience by putting them in front of a person who can understand and be empathetic and sympathetic with their circumstances.
Absolutely. And the other thing is they give you answers to questions you're not asked yet. That's the frightening thing. When you're using true data science and you're using machine learning to look at data sets, and it's pulling out, it might be segments or it might be pulling out outliers. You've got to go and ask the question, what's this actually telling us? And there's probably insights within that data that the artificial intelligence is putting out for you that you never even thought of, and how you can tailor services. So, as we mature into that space, I think there's a lot of opportunities to be able to use that.
Well, I think that's a great positive note to end this podcast. So we'll wrap things up there. All that's left for me to say is thank you to John Cocker for joining us, and thanks to everyone who's listened to the podcast today. If you found any of the thanks, absolutely, John. Really good to have a conversation with you and find out a bit more about platform and your strategy. Hopefully other IT leaders such as yourself will hear what you've had to say today, find some really useful nuggets of information in there, and hopefully that'll help to bring the sector together and do some more of the benchmarking. I think it's a great idea. I really, really like it. Thank you for listening to the Social Housing Podcast with me, Lewis Murray. We'd love for you to be part of our inclusive community to learn and grow in the social housing space. Go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc., and search for the Social Housing Podcast to be in good company with other social housing professionals. Also, feel free to connect with VoiceScape on LinkedIn.